Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Dan Nessel Show. I'm your host, Dan Nessel. We've been talking a lot about community recently on the show, and I think we need to dig in a little bit more. Someone recently told me that a community is a group of people with a common interest. That's far too basic of a definition because I think there's a lot more to it than that. These people may share a common interest, but what really makes them gel as a community is purposeful intent. They get involved in order to achieve something together, and they're motivated to contribute to one another's journey. And that's how I like to think of my guest today. She's a learner, she's innately curious, she's generous with her knowledge and her time, and that's great because she's so selflessly dedicated to her communities. She's the founder of Beyond Engagement, a social media consultancy and training company, and a facilitator for Sparkle Hustle Grow, a community for 1,200 plus female entrepreneurs. She's a Rotarian and a mom to 2 beautiful daughters. And on top of all this, like me, she's an active member of the Rise community and mildly obsessed with Web3 and the future of marketing. There's so much more I can say, but let's just get into marketing and community, Web3 and more with the incredible, the amazing Valentina Escobar Gonzalez. Valentina, it's great to see you.
Dan, thank you so much for that introduction. That was beautiful. I'm so grateful to be here. And I wanted to say something. This might be an inspiration or maybe a sign for someone. What is the ROI of attending a conference or a retreat this moment? Because a lot of people are like, do I go to the next conference? Do I invest the time, the resources? I have a family. I have to take care of my aging parents, what have you. And this moment proves the value of investing not only in a conference, but being early. Both of us, we were both early at the uprising. And so you know what happens when you're early to something. You're like the only one there, or maybe someone else. So we bonded because we were like the early, the early bird gets the worm.
That's right. We were the early arrivals. We met at the uprising, and I couldn't agree more. There are certain conferences that, you want to sort of not only attend, but attend on a regular basis and sort of get to know the people there. And, once you start doing that, you get the hang of things and you start to kind of, I don't know, I wouldn't call it clicks, but you certainly can start to associate with people who are more in your wheelhouse. The uprising is a little different because the uprising is, people who've listened to my show before know that I've spoken about it. It's almost an anti-conference that's set up by Mark Schaefer, our friend and mentor and, writer and just a tremendous mind for us to have a chance to hang around with and, collaborate with, which is fantastic. But Mark set up the uprising almost as a response to those huge conferences that, you go to a conference and you get a tag and, a lanyard, and you can go to this hallway or you can go to that session. And if you have the right color lanyard, then okay, you can go to the VIP dinner. The uprising is limited to 30 people, and we're all of a common interest. We're all, almost vetted a little bit in advance. I would like to think we are, but fundamentally, Mark has been trying to do his best to build these communities, and that's what the uprising is. The uprising is its own community, even if it only meets every so often. And that kind of brings us a lot closer to where we want to be with this show today, all about community in some ways.
I think it's about what you invest in. There's people that went to the conference or the retreat and they didn't put themselves out there. And they probably didn't get what they wanted. I was very vulnerable, very candid. And I think it's important to be authentic. It's important to put yourself out there. It's important to do research. It's important to be early to events. And I think what you put in is what you get out.
You said put yourself out there and be authentic. And I couldn't agree more. And I feel like you do that all the time, 24/7. And it's got to be exhausting.
Oh, yeah, it is.
How did you get there? How did you become you? How did you get to that point where you have this kind of mission in life to not only learn, but like you said, put yourself out there, but it's not a selfish thing. It's a selfless thing. And it's rare. I think it's a rare breed.
I'm a 2 on the Enneagram. So if you're into those like self tests to understand what type of personality you are, I think it's important. And that's why I did the research. I had a couple of days. I was off a few days before the conference. I had family visiting. So it was laundry day. I was catching up with laundry day after, a long visit with my in-laws. And I was like in my laundry room. I don't know if anyone has this special room in your house where you get the best thoughts. So in my case, it's the laundry room. So I just started taking notes on everyone and really understanding people, because I think you have to be prepared. You have to do research. You have the tools. There's no excuse to bond with someone. If they have a profile, there is a way to really identify and create a relationship with someone if you take the time to research who they are and what they stand for. So that's what I did with everyone. I took little notes on everyone. And that's just the personality that I have. I'm a 2, which is a very caring person, very oriented with people. And I just love caring for others. It's kind of like a mama bear type of thing. I love helping others. And that has helped me be so good with people and build relationships with individuals that other people don't utilize that. It's a fascination. Like, I studied animal sciences in college. I should have studied something else, like, anthropology or something, the study of others, because I just think people are so fascinating. I just get a kick out of them.
Well, maybe it's the fact that you did study animal sciences. I had a guest on a while back, Pam Knoyer, who's out, I think, in Oregon, and she was really into horses as a kid.
Oh, really?
Oh, like it still is. It was a while back, so I can't remember everything. And it's funny because we mentioned Brooke Sells. We were talking about her earlier. Brooke is also an equine enthusiast, right? But anyway, Pam was saying how you can learn so much about people from horses. Mm-hmm. And, I spent a little time summers when I was a kid learning how to ride, but I never really got into horses that much. I love horses, don't get me wrong. They're noble creatures and they're really innocent. And I think, I don't know them all that well, but you actually made a go of it. Even some of your social media handles are like Equine Valentina. And it's like, I'm really curious to know.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait to tell you the story. So yeah. God has a sense of humor with me. I learned that saying here in Tennessee. I'm originally from Miami, Florida, and I somehow ended up in Tennessee. But I heard this saying and I thought that was so me, because of my whole childhood, I wanted to be a veterinarian. And I lived in Miami, Florida. You can't think of it, but there's a place called Horse Country. It's like a 4-mile radius in the heart of Miami, and it's all farms in the middle of Miami. So I rode horses. I rode gaited horses, Paso Finos, for those of the people in the audience that are Puerto Rican or Colombian or Peruvian. It's a specific horse that has a very unique gait. And you can technically have a glass of wine and it won't spill.
Wow.
It has such a smooth gait. So I rode horses and I was like, I want to be a veterinarian. And it's so funny. When I started college, I took the career test and it said marketer. And I'm like, I refuse to believe this. I refuse. Because I was like, business. My parents are in business. I want to be a veterinarian. And then I took organic chemistry, and the rest is history.
Oh, yeah.
So I switched my major, and I wanted to work for like a pharmaceutical company or a feed company, being a sales rep or something like that. So I graduated in the worst year to graduate, which was 2008.
Oh, no. Yeah.
It was a great year because it was a great year because I got engaged and I got married and I graduated, but it was a very bad year to find jobs. And I got the first job right out of college, and it was selling medical equipment. So like defibrillators. So I would, sell things that would shock you back into life.
Yeah.
And I had to learn CPR and first aid, and I taught classes in that. And I said to myself, okay, what's my next step? So I said, well, let me go back to school. Let me get my MBA. And it's so funny. I did it in campus. And then the last semester, my husband got a job opportunity here in Northeast Tennessee. And I finished my last semester online. It was my only semester online. Everything else was in person with actual students in a classroom setting. So I graduated, and I didn't see any job opportunities at the time. To me, every answer in my MBA program, with the exception of business law, was, let's just solve it on social media. I read David Meerman Scott's book, maybe 2007, 2008, the first edition of the New Rules of Marketing and PR.
Yes.
It's so funny because I just read the 8th edition as a refresher.
Did you finish it?
Yes, I finished it. I gave him my Amazon review. It was really good. It's so good. It's like, I feel like everyone needs to read that book. Yeah, you have it right there.
You know, people can't see the video, but I'm holding this thing up. And I remember the first edition was considerably thinner than this one. I feel like it was.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that there's some things in there that are the same, but I can't wait to crack into it. Just a matter of devoting the time. He's a genius. And
he is.
I read 2 editions. I think I read the first and like the third edition, perhaps, because I was in a class for my master's program.
You went to Full Sail. Did you know Carrie or Shay Gorgon?
Of course, yeah. She was my instructor. Yeah,
I live for Carrie. I love that girl. I love her.
Thank you for reminding me, because I got to reach out to her, because I would love to have her on the show. But she's just tremendous, and she was our social strategy professor, instructor, and just tremendous. What a great course that was. The program was fantastic. It was really one of those things where you get out of it what you put into it. And, I know that some people say these online courses can be diploma mills and such. I never got that feeling. I worked my ass off. It was a compacted program into a year.
Yeah, I heard that you did 3 classes in a month.
One class every month. So 3 credits a month.
3 credits. That's what I meant. Yes.
So yeah, it was intense. And, Carrie's class was fantastic. But, the professors, some of my classmates, still contacts to this day. But I did that in 2010, graduated 11. So it's almost basically all obsolete now.
That's exactly when I did my MBA. I did it from 2010, 2011. And it's so funny, like you said, it's again what we just said earlier. What you put in is what you get out. Like my marketing instructor, she still buys Girl Scout cookies from me. Even though she lives in Florida, she buys Girl Scout cookies from me because we still have that bond.
It's fantastic, right? It's intense, grad school for sure. And doing things online at that time, especially, was sort of cutting edge, although like it was starting to get much more mainstreamed.
Yeah.
But like I did enjoy it. My point really was that book, The New Rules of Marketing PR, was also part of that course. So that's the last time I read it. So it's been 10 years. I think it's time 11 years. I think it's time to read it again. But, David is he's one of these inspirational figures who had the good fortune of meeting a couple times. We have a Japan connection.
Yes.
His wife's Japanese.
Yes, I remember. I seen that. Yeah.
And one of his friends there was a guy that I knew in my time in Japan, and through like the kind of passing messages from one along the chain, I managed to get a signed copy of the first edition, from him. And like, it's really cool. Shout out to John Harris in Japan, but awesome guy and great, so much knowledge. I still use newsjacking all the time as a term. And what I love most about it is, well, not only that it's written so well, but it's also that it sort of set me on the path to marketing, but also convinced me that there shouldn't be a line between marketing and PR. Like marketing and PR are just kind of different edges or different facets of the same diamond, but they're so it's weird when you see somebody who's like, yeah, I'm a PR person, I'm not a marketer. You kind of are though. Or marketing people who discount PR for one reason or another. It's like, well, why would you do that?
I kind of say that to people. I'm like, I am not a PR person. I feel like marketers don't say they're PR people. Right. But PR people can say they're marketers. I think there's a big distinction.
I mean, it depends on what you're defining as PR, first of all. I mean, clearly most marketers are not going to really focus any of their time in like media relations and like traditional PR, that kind of stuff. Like, yeah, you're not going to go out and write press releases. You're not going to look at, trying to earn, earned media. That's not your thing. But where PR has evolved and where I think it's absolutely if it's not a Venn diagram, it's basically 100% overlap with marketing, is that all of the top of the funnel activities that go to changing hearts and minds rather than selling products. So, comms, communications, PR has either encroached on marketing, grabbed that, or marketing has been too slow to understand that, building those relationships, having those conversations at the beginning of the customer cycle is really the domain of people who can tell stories.
You're preaching right now. I love this.
I am. I'm sorry. I'm getting preachy. I've been thinking about this a lot lately and talking about it too. But because I don't want there to be a distinction. There are certain tasks, like I said, that are better left to people who like doing that stuff. But
yeah,
look, my kind of goal in life, really, right, in my current day job right now, is actually to convince leadership that, they shouldn't be thinking the marketing budget goes to marketing and the PR budget goes to PR. They should kind of look at us together and say, well, how do we reach different audiences and who needs the right budget to do that? It's not about which chair you sit in, But anyway, sorry, you set me off a little bit there on a really fun tangent, and we can go back to it. But I think anybody who tells stories and is trying to build a reputation is in the comms and PR space. That's really where, I feel like we're going, and where, like, even in the Rise community and the things that we're talking about with Mark and, some of the projects we're working on, a lot of that is just sort of like, yeah, but that's what communicators do, that marketers do that. It's all bites from the same apple. I can think of 1,000 metaphors, but yeah, that's kind of where, But sorry, so I totally interrupted you. 2012, you finished your MBA and you're in Tennessee now.
Yeah, so I finished my MBA in 2011, and then in 2012, right at the beginning of 2012, I started my business. I spent a couple of months here, and I didn't see any job opportunities, and I was all over the place. I was, going to all the chamber events, participating in a lot of networking events, and I kept seeing no pattern. There was no job opportunity, so I said to myself, I'm just going to start a job. I'm going to create my own business for myself. And people thought I was weird. Social media, who? You could just imagine the Tennessee accent, very thick Southern accent, saying, social media? What are you? And I was a pioneer, and I didn't understand it at the time.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time that first year here volunteering with a lot of organizations to tell you that I won a 40 under 40, which is an award. Yeah. I think it's all over the country, but 40 of the best professionals under the age of 40 within a year of moving here from Florida. So I was very determined to really get the word out and build my business.
Yeah. That's also around the time that you, soon thereafter, you got the attention of Mark, with the 70 rising stars of social media.
Social Slam. Yeah. Yeah, it was so funny. That's where I actually met Carrie. So the first year, the first year I was not pregnant, but I met Mark. And this is, again, it's putting yourself out there.
Yep.
It's very scary. You're like, okay, do I embarrass myself? And he was the keynote speaker, and he had his book. I never met him before. And I said to myself, I'm going to go to the line and get my book signed by him. I have nothing to lose. And I didn't know who he was. I didn't have time to research. I like to research. I have my little notepad with information.
Was this at Social Media Marketing World, or was it?
No, this was Social Slam. This was
Social Slam. Okay.
Yeah, this was his own conference here in Knoxville in Northeast Tennessee. And I went up to him, and I met his wife and him, and I had him sign my book. And I'm like, okay, I don't know who he is. Let's talk about golf, because I'm from Florida, so maybe he's a golfer. He was not a golfer, but somehow we took a picture. We stayed in touch. I followed him on Twitter, and I found his address on his website. And I think at one point I either sent him a thank you card or a Christmas card. Oh. And we stayed in touch. And, I'm very old fashioned. I might be a millennial, but I feel like I'm an old woman millennial, because I still write, I get a high writing little handwritten notes. I love doing that sort of stuff. And I think we just stayed in contact, and I sent him the Christmas, and then he invited me the following year to be in the panel. And Carrie was the person leading the panel.
Right.
And by then I was extremely pregnant, and the sponsor was a big bean can company. I don't know if I should say the name, but anyways, I ate my heart out. And here I am wearing a really tight red dress, my huge pregnant belly, and I was part of a panel talking about social media basics at the conference the following year. And it's just, and you, like I said, you just keep in contact with folks. And then eventually Carrie and I stayed in contact. I actually showed up at the Marketing Smarts podcast at one point, interviewed by Carrie. So, we just stayed in contact over the years. But again, it's all about putting yourself out there. If I had not taken that step to go get the book signed by Mark and just talk about golf, being an ex-Floridian, and just putting myself out there and taking the initiative to write him a little handwritten card, that sort of stuff.
So critically important, I think, to take this away, everybody who's listening. Put yourself out there. So easy to say it. And you hear it all the time, like put yourself out there. It's easy, and the retort from people who won't put themselves out there to say their retort is, it's easy for you to say, because it is. But I don't know another way to kind of get that point across about how important it is to just take a breath and reprogram your head right there and then, if it needs to be immediate or just kind of slowly, but just change your own mindset. And we talk about that a lot too. You understand that your fear of what's going to happen is absolutely ridiculous because you don't know what's going to happen. You have no control over that anyway. So, you take a deep breath or maybe you're a brave soul and you just go for it. But
I do the Superwoman pose. If you listen to the Amy Cuddy TED Talk, she actually came here to speak in Northeast Tennessee, but then I heard her TED Talk. And I even did that at the Uprising a few minutes before I had to present in front of all you all. But can you imagine speaking in front of the top 30 people on top of their game? You can imagine how much fun.
We're an easy bunch.
Yeah, that was, I did the Superwoman pose. I do that. I hold it. I'm doing it right now with you. And I just stretch my arms out and I just take a couple of deep breaths and you just go for it. Seize the day.
Yeah, no, and that makes perfect sense. I always feel like I need to be prepared, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because I'm not generally a planner, even my show, like we did a little bit of talking and I have some ideas, but generally speaking, I don't do a lot of research for my show unless somebody's written a book and I want to talk about that on the show, but I mean, I'll do research, don't get me wrong, but not like a whole lot. I like the spontaneity of it. I like to kind of really, I'm curious and I can't fake curiosity. I need to be in real time, but still, right. The idea of going up to somebody who I've admired from afar or I'm familiar with their books, you have this kind of image or this feeling that they're too busy or they're too famous or whatever to spend any time with you. And it took me far, far too long in my life to get to the point where I was like, why should I care? Right? If they don't want to talk to me, they'll turn around and they'll go someplace else. And then, that just means they're a dick. What am I going to say? Right? Like
you also have to think, this is another thing. And anyone else that's watching, maybe let us know. COVID has changed me. I used to be a social butterfly and now I'm a little bit not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah.
Especially with that event that we went to, the retreat. Yeah. It's still, you put yourself out there and then with everything that has happened, you're not used to being in a group setting as often. So I think it was nice to see that others being vulnerable with me. And when you go to a retreat, not a conference.
Yeah.
I don't know if you felt this way, Dan. We're going to be very vulnerable here.
Let's hit it.
But it was kind of like being in summer camp. That you see these folks then you leave and then you're like, when am I going to see them again?
It was like summer camp.
And I was exactly kind of sad right after the event because I was like, we just spent 3 days with these folks. We went hiking. We did yoga. We listened to the bluegrass band. We did all these fun things. And it's like you've developed a friendship with some people.
This is the genius of it. I totally appreciate the idea that coming out of, the COVID times that we had come out of. And, frankly, even after that, some people were still in it and, it's still going around. But I think as a society, finally, we're sort of like, let's just move forward. But at that time, we were all dying to get out of it. But we brought our tests to the location, this beautiful lodge in Tennessee. And, it was only 30 of us. So once we all tested once we all tested negative, then we're able to. But the fact that you had these kind of barriers like that before you even get started meeting somebody already, I think, put us in a sort of heightened state of stress, maybe even a little trauma. And, it took a little while for the ice to melt, I think, for some people. And certainly, it was odd to be together with actual real humans in a room for the first time in several years, 2 years, I think. It had been 2 years since social media marketing world. And that was, so SMMW 2020 was the last conference I had been to. Man, it was weird. I didn't necessarily feel like I didn't feel odd about it. I felt like I was just thirsty. And like after you'd wandering the desert, somebody hands you a glass of water. That's what the Uprising felt like a lot to me. And I didn't know where to start. I'm certainly a social person. I like to to just make these connections and talk with people for real. And I feel like I had a lot of connections there of, the folks who I did spend time with, such valuable time. And I feel like, man, I got to follow up with this person. I have to follow up with this person, but life gets in the way.
Yeah. It's not that you just went to a conference. You hiked with them. I did yoga with some of them. We went to that bluegrass concert. We had, we broke bread. We had lunch, breakfast, dinner, it wasn't just, okay, we actually quality time with individuals.
Yeah. That's true. And let's face it, it was the anti-conference. So it wasn't like, okay, the people with the black lanyards and the green lanyards and the red lanyards go over there. Like it was, and I keep talking about lanyards because that just keeps popping in my head about social media marketing world that had those color coded. But with with the uprising, Mark is really the host with the most, right? So
yeah.
And this goes back to what you're saying about put yourself out there. So when I first met Mark, and I've told the story before, that was exactly my mindset. Like, shit, that's Mark Schaefer. Wow. I mean, I've been connected to him for like 15 years through LinkedIn, but I've never met him. And he's authored, like at that point, 7 or 8 books. Damn, look at him. He's surrounded by, and there with, there's Brooke Sellis and there's, some other, big social media person. And there's Michael Stelzner. And there's like, he's talking with those people. Who am I? Right. I'm just attendee at this place. I don't think, I don't want to encroach. But then I saw him standing alone, just looking at his phone. He was standing alone. And I was, it was before the conference even started. And I was like, you know what? What the hell? So, so I walked over to him. I said, Mark, I don't know if you remember me. I mean, we've never actually met, but we've been connected for like 15 years, early LinkedIn times. And, I just want to say your books have made a difference in my life. And, I'm just glad to meet you.
I love it.
He was like, oh, Daniel, I introduced myself first, but he's like, oh, Daniel, let's talk. And he just pulled me over and we talked for a bit, just, I don't know, not too long. And then like a couple hours later, the conference is in full swing, right? And, he sees me in the hallway. There's hundreds of people walking through the halls, right? And this is 2019, I guess. There's tons of people in the hall. And he sees me and I'm like, I make contact and I just raise my hand. He goes, oh, Daniel, come here. And this is like, I had only spoken to him 5 minutes, maybe. And he hands me this little square, and I still have it, which is like a secret invitation to a pizza lunch.
Ooh.
Right? It's like, why don't you come tomorrow? We're talking about something. It's only, I think partly because I was one of the older people there, I'm certainly, social media marketers like all like, by now it's like all Gen Z people, but really, a lot of young people who are just kind of there to learn about Instagram. Now, not there's anything wrong with that. I was clearly not in that set. So maybe he thought there was something there. I don't know, but I went to this lunch with him, Chris Brogan, sitting there, all these great, wonderful people who, I'd seen online, but never really connected with before. And we just had this great, intimate conversation. And then I realized Mark is he's just approachable. He's just like a guy. He does a lot of stuff. He's really accomplished, but he's generous with his time. And I felt like he genuinely wants to hear what people have to say. I feel like a lot of those conversations he has are sort of validating his own thinking in some ways. Like he has these thoughts and he wants to gut check. But anyway, like set off I think what's turned out to be a really wonderful connection and certainly a good relationship. And now, here I am with you. And you said early, the first thing you talked about when we hit the record button was the ROI of a conference. And this is kind of the perfect example. I can't agree with you more, but I feel like it's such an incredible ROI. It's hard to quantify.
And this is the quantifying part. Like you like you and me talking, and then a lot of these things, it's going to some people are going to listen to it and say, you know what? I listened to what Valentina said.
Yeah.
I signed up for that conference. That's, a 3-hour plane ride or what have you. And I met my new best friend. Or that led to a whole bunch of business or something.
Yeah.
And you can't trace that unless you actually take the step and do it. Take the time to do the conference. Yeah.
And none of that would have ever happened. I would have never been part of the uprising. I would have never, if I didn't see Mark alone in the hallway and say, just put myself out there, you know?
Yeah.
What the hell, right? So definitely, anybody's listening, we have a lot of folks who struggle with imposter syndrome and who struggle with taking that first step, the fear of rejection, all of those things that are weighing on your head. It's like those, what do you call it? The, what somebody would call the BS, the behavioral systems, behavioral structures or something that are, belief systems, BS that are stuck in your head and you have to kind of get around them. Yeah, we all carry those around.
I was actually feeling it today because I was doing some research and listening to your past podcasts. And I realized this is such a great opportunity. I have not written a book. And, I was listening to all the previous ones you have had. And I heard a really insightful thing. First of all, I heard a Steve Martin quote. It's on my calendar today for today's date. It says, "Be so good, they can't ignore you."
Ooh.
This is a quote from Steve Martin.
Be so good, they can't ignore you.
They can't ignore you. And then I was on my treadmill and I was hearing the two people on the treadmill. I have one of those treadmills that has a little TV on it. And they were talking about Malcolm Gladwell's book. Is it David versus Goliath? I don't know if it rings a bell.
I haven't read that one.
But basically, some people think it's a disadvantage, but those disadvantages that you think you have are actually your advantages. So I was thinking, okay, I know that I'm going to have so much fun with Dan because we're going to connect about this great experience that we feel and then just being authentic with each other. Yeah. We're going to make it fun and light. But I think everyone experiences that imposter syndrome, back to your point there. And it's just taking the time to appreciate what you can offer someone.
And and that kind of takes me to, I want to explore a little bit more about, how you built your business, because you talk about putting yourself out there. You're just like, you know what? I can't find, there's no jobs for me. I'm just going to make it happen.
Yeah.
And you knew enough to get started. You had family around you. So you weren't alone. You felt like, okay, I feel like emotionally I'm in a good place. And I've been to Tennessee now once or twice. It's beautiful. So you have a nice place to be. And probably, I would imagine it would have been a great place to start a social media business, because those are the sort of early days or middle days, I suppose, when you think about it from now, but still early enough where you didn't have a lot of knowledge out there, right? You just had a lot of pretenders, and the industry is changing so much. It still is, but at that time, I think it was really rapidly changing. I think I was listening to the Mark Zuckerberg, Joe Rogan podcast, and Zuckerberg was going through his timeline with Facebook, and I didn't realize that. It started like in 2007, and it wasn't open to or 2000, something like that.
It was 2005. It was open to only college students.
Only college students at first, and it didn't open to others until 2009 or more. Yeah. And it was just like this, the way that all developed. Like, you're talking 2012. That's not Facebook by that point had, maybe a couple 100 million of people already. But it wasn't the 3.5 billion, member juggernaut it is now. It was sky's limit. LinkedIn was still struggling. I was always I was always riding the LinkedIn horse myself, but I think it was struggling at the time.
I was on that puppy too. I think I was on there in 2009.
Yeah.
So 2008, 2009. Yeah. So I was on there early on too. But when you think about it, when I started my business, I only knew one person that was getting paid in the area to do social media. At the time, not even the agencies had social media. And I said to myself, it's a way to communicate with your customers. How are you going to know how to sell to them, how to approach them, how to market to them if you don't know what they're saying?
Yeah. So when you started looking at social media back then, it sounds like you grasped the whole concept of it's a conversation, right? That's what Brooke's book is all about.
And I just finished her book. Her book is awesome. I just finished it over the weekend.
I have it right here. I feel like I cheated because she was on my show before the book came out, and I read the first excerpt that she sent me, but I didn't read the whole thing. And I'm dying. It's in the queue. She's delightful. But the point is, she's saying that conversations. She's talking about conversations that connect. There's a lot more evidence to that now. There's a lot more theory behind what she's talking about. But it's been with social since the beginning. And that's what social media is all about. The power of conversation, not just to connect with others, but to listen and hear what people are saying and learn about what your target audience is, whether they're your customers or, a group of people that you want to convey a specific message to, or people you really want to, convince that, hey, no, I'm a good person, whatever it is, whatever your goal is, listening first is a rule of a conversation. It's the same thing on social, right? So you listen first. It sounds like you were right there in those early days. And, how did you build your client base? How did you get the whole thing off the ground? And then just putting yourself out there and saying, hey, I'm a social, that had to start it off, but then how did it really work for you?
I stick out like a sore thumb in Northeast Tennessee. Okay. So I think that was, I stand out because first of all, I go by my middle name, which is Valentina. Mm-hmm. And I was very intentional. How many Valentinas do you know?
One.
Yeah. So I was very intentional, and I kind of stand out here. I'm a Hispanic in Northeast Tennessee, in a very, I feel like I'm not in a big city. I'm in a small town. So like I said earlier, I was volunteering. I was part of a lot of committees. I auto-invited myself to a lot of things. And like I said, within a year of moving here from Florida, I was nominated for 40 Under 40, which is a very prestigious award, and I know it's a national thing. And so that just showed people, okay, if she won that award, she's worth investing time with. So I had to spend a lot of time volunteering in marketing committees for local organizations. And again, auto-inviting myself to events. I went, and I blogged about this several times. I just show up, like tomorrow's event, I just register and I just show up to things, mm-hmm. and I just start talking, and I just go to things. I go to chamber events and I just put myself out there. And it's like with social media, you see people that do these ads and it's just call to action. Buy from me, buy from me, buy from me. But to really sell to someone, to really connect with someone, you have to take time. When you go to any networking events, you put yourself out there. The second thing is, okay, let's make the line to the food. The long buffet line. And I'm a foodie, this is a big deal. So I literally have gone to Chamber of Commerce's breakfasts and I make the long line and I'm like, okay, I really want that Danish. So I start making the line, and then there's the people in front of me, behind me. And I'm like, okay, I paid XYZ money to be a member of this thing. I'm not going to look at my phone and pretend I'm looking at my phone. I'm going to start talking to the person behind me and the person in front of me. And that's how it is with social media. You connect with people, you take the time to get to know them. Maybe I connect with the person in front of me. They're like, hey, I need help with social media. I just don't get Instagram. And I tell them, okay, Instagram has 58 times more engagement than Facebook. And that's like, oh, okay, let me look into that. Or I tell them, okay, 41% of people that are on LinkedIn are millionaires. Oh, so it's not what it is.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I think I heard it was 39 now. It's a recent number that I heard. I thought it was 41 forever, But now I saw it was 39%. But, you see these things, okay, and like your eyebrows went up.
Yeah.
So it's like, so these things stand out. And so you do that. You talk to someone, you connect with them, and then you're like, okay, why don't we have a cup of coffee, 3 months down the line? And then I sit with them and I understand what their needs are. I try to solve that problem that they can't figure out. Something on Instagram or on LinkedIn, and then eventually become a customer. Mm-hmm. So every time I see people do these ads on Facebook and LinkedIn, it's like, buy, buy, buy. But no, you have to identify your audience, just like that Chamber of Commerce breakfast.
Yeah.
You go, you make the time, you go get your Danish or your omelet, you're stuck in a long line at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're still asleep, but you take the time to get to know someone. Then they're like, okay, I want to get to know you too. You have a cup of coffee. And then once you had a meeting with them, then you become a customer. They become a client. So I always see people do these like Facebook ads and Instagram ads, and it's just like buy, buy, buy. No, get to know your audience, build a campaign catering to that audience. And then, whatever it is, whether you boost or, just spend more money promoting a specific thing that you do, and then have a call to action.
That keyword you keep using, I think a lot of people don't understand and still don't understand, despite how much we talk about it, is time. And the instant gratification culture that I think permeates so many of our world now, where things are just a click away. You want something, you just get it. Time is compressed, right? People think that instant is sometimes too long because they can just do whatever they want anytime, right? So when you're a marketer or you're a communicator, and you're trying to help people understand something a little more deeply or build that relationship, it's very, very difficult to, I guess, compete with like another product or another person or another service that they can just kind of reach out to and get themselves like, any way they want. So, that's why advertising, like you're talking about Facebook, whatever it is, doesn't work, right? It doesn't work anymore because people will ignore that and just go, I know how to get what I want to get. Screw that. I know which clicks to do. I've got whatever my favorite shops are. And by the way, if I'm on Instagram, I'm going to see 150 different ads today about like cool products that are totally tailored to me. So, it's going to stick in my mind. I don't have to talk to anybody, right? But that's if I'm buying a shirt. If I'm like trying to decide who is the best person to partner with for a big project or what cause I should believe in, that's clearly not the best way to do that, right? This is where time and touch points and relationships really matter more. And this is kind of where what I wanted to really kind of hear your thoughts on is, right, you're by your own admission, old fashioned in some ways, like where you're doing a lot of these in real life, kind of like old school. Let's chat. Let's actually meet in person and let's have coffee. Like, I mean, people clearly do this, but you don't think of it at first, right? But you have this kind of mixture. You have this hybrid where you do that. You send notes, handwritten notes to people. I mean, absolutely, so powerful. The time, just the gesture and the authenticity of that is unbeatable. But
it's like one of our mutual contacts, Evelyn.
Mm-hmm,
Evelyn Starr. She writes her little notes too,
man.
and I was like, I love that because
She gave the best presentation, one of the best presentations I ever saw on one of the Uprising calls. I don't know if you remember this, if you were on that one. It was like when the Uprising
was online. The first,
it was one of the online ones, right? It wasn't it wasn't the in-person thing. So it was like, just for people who are already going. And Evelyn, like all these, you had people speaking and presenting and they're doing their PowerPoints. Evelyn gets up there or gets on the screen and she's got like drawings, like handwritten drawings to illustrate her points. She doesn't have slides. She's just talking through things. And I thought, that's what you need. Like that's, first of all, I remember it and it was a long time ago, but secondly, it just connected with people more. There's something more natural about it. We're so consumed with these, with technology and the tools we have available to us, we forget that sometimes, taking that handwritten note is the right thing to do.
It's like surprise and delight. I think that's something that I love. I live for surprise and delight. And like today, you have to be patient. If you really want to be in the long game, you have to be patient. Like today, I landed a client.
Congrats.
That has probably taken me realistically 6 to 8 years.
Wow.
And it's going to be huge. And
congrats.
It was just, thank you. It's just, I haven't had a chance to appreciate it, that you celebrate it, but it's been, you take the time and it's the touch points. And I know we lost 2 years with COVID. So, but it's like, you taking just being patient and really appreciating that person and getting to know them. Again, it comes back to researching them, understanding what they're it might even go down to like the college football team, talking about that, the trash talk between the football and everything. But it's just doing those sort of things. And like I said, now you remember her presentation because it was handwritten, it was handmade.
Yeah.
And it goes back to being the most human person, back to Mark's book.
The most human marketer wins, right? It's a human company. It's a human company, human brand. The human company wins.
Don't put me on the spot.
But the point is to be the human part of it. And that's where you're really excelling. So this is where I wanted to ask you something. And I know we keep getting diverted because so much fun to chat, but
I have that effect on people.
Oh, I know. And that's great. And by the way, that's just the nature of this crazy show that I have is, we're just really organic. We roll with it. But I do want to ask you really about this whole idea of like, you're talking about time, putting in the time, build these relationships. So everything's relationship based for you. And that automatically kind of gives you a certain value when you bring on a new client or a new connection. There's already a value attributed to that because you've taken the time to make that happen. So you're on safer ground a little bit in some ways, but at the same time, the expectations are pretty high because it's taken so long to get there. But the point is, right, that time plus touch points, et cetera, it deepens the relationship, which then deepens trust. Now, that starts to happen again and again and again, right, in aggregate. So you build an audience, or you start to kind of find other people where this is happening. And sometimes you do it for business, and sometimes you do it for your own personal fulfillment, or for giving, or whatever it is. This is where I think communities really start to come in, right? Because you're having these extended time, like multiple connections with people, and there's a certain amount of trust that's bubbling up, and then you discover, you know what? I mean, we share so many of the same values. We want marketing to be better. We want to have fun with social media. We believe that like relationships are core to business. Like it shouldn't be business first, it should be relationship first. We believe that, that there's a future in which we do good, in which marketing and what we do is a force for good. We also believe that it's assaulted from all sides, and there's certain kind of, like an urgency to be more human and stop doing shitty things to our customers, right? So we believe in all these things together. Mark has been facilitating this a bit, but you learn this over time. You can't just know this right away. So you learn this over time, and there's a good chance that the people you're close with and friendly with are also like-minded, right? So over time, you start to, connect with different people, and you have this loose group. Now that becomes, I suppose, a community eventually, right? So in your world, when you're having these touch points, do you think about that when you are building these relationships? Do you think that ultimately I'm building a tribe, a community, or do you think that, or does that happen more organically with you?
I think it happens organically. You don't really know what you're going to get out of a relationship when you first meet someone.
Yeah.
You don't know the ripple effect, how much it's going to impact you, your family, your contacts. And I think it's just the desire to be a connector. I might not be able to help you, but I might direct you to the right person.
Yeah, you're absolutely a connector for sure, but you're also a helper. I mean, in the time that I've known you, it's been what, 5 or 6 months so far? It's not, doesn't seem,
yes,
April, right? It doesn't seem that long, but I feel like I've seen you, particularly you on Instagram a lot, because you connected with me, and you see some things that I put out there, and you comment, and I know it's coming from like, it's just, hey, we met, I know you, we're friends here. I'm interested in what you just did. And that touches the heart, right? Like, oh, I mean, I made an impression, and clearly, she's interested in what I'm doing. And then that becomes more of a, there's back and forth, there's stuff happening. So you're building this relationship. Now, we've then been sort of corralled, I think, into this new community with Mark, right? With the Rise community, but that's not the only community we each belong to. It's just like, I knew being part of the Uprising was also being part of a community. But community was always kind of this loose word that was thrown around. Like, you're in this community now. You're in the community now.
Let me stop you there, because there's other people that went to the Uprising that are not in that community.
Yeah.
Remember that. There is 30 people, but not all 30 of them are in that other community.
Right.
And it's again, how much are you personally invested? And I might deviate. One of the big speakers we had at the Uprising was on Web3, the metaverse, NFTs, all that stuff.
What, you're talking about Matt Sweezy?
Yes, as a mama bear, you learn about these things, and you have little ones, and you learn about all the stuff that's going on. And as a marketer, you're curious. As a parent with little ones, you're extra curious, cautious, have anxiety, but you're fascinated. And it was a mix of emotions. And, that's another thing. When you're part of a community, you want to help each other. And what I love about this community you're mentioning, we're all learning this stuff. We're all trying to understand it because we see an opportunity, another platform maybe, but it's an opportunity, and it's fascinating and it's beautiful.
it's intentional too, right? So, I mean, frankly, so the barriers to entry of joining, being part of the Rise community, which is what we're talking about now, it's not monetary, right? It's not that. It's really about like, are you willing to, okay, set something up on a website and then set something up on another place and then kind of go through the motions.
Get the headset thing.
Everything.
Yeah.
Right. Getting everything all square away. And then that one, the metaverse side of it, where getting a headset or not, like there's a lot of, a lot of kind of hurdles to jump through in some ways, but that's the beauty of it, because you have to be, if you're of the mindset where, you know what, each one of these hurdles is a learning experience, because it's all based on loosely where Web3 is going, right? And of course, within our community, we're not talking always about Web3. Web3 is just a major part of it, but it's all kind of loosely based on the fact that we couldn't do this without what's coming down the pike in Web3. But I agree. Like it was scary hearing Matt talk about it. Like scary, or like my mind is still turning.
I had so much anxiety because it's fascinating, but then as a parent of little ones still, it's scary because I don't know anything, and that's supposedly the future. So like I told Mark when I went to his place over the summer, my inspiration to better understand Web3 is those two little girls over there.
That is, and I can totally believe that and see that. And, I have to admit that my inspiration to really figure out Web3 had nothing to do with my girls. It's like, no, I mean, when now I think about it, of course it's great. I really do want to make sure, but my feeling is that my girls are a little older, but 18 and 16, but
they're 10 years older than mine.
So they're already basically people, right? And they're digital natives. They understand all this stuff sort of without any real kind of conceptual leaps. I think that they'll get it, like they'll understand it, and I think they just need to make their own mistakes with it. But I am also petrified that they are going to kind of be victims of identity theft and things like this, right? That's where like I have to. So I hear about, or I look at, since we heard from Matt Sweezy about the Web3 stuff, like the pros and cons and the upsides and the downsides keep playing themselves out again and again in my head. And then, later on I connect with Brian Piper, who's in our Rise community. And Brian he's amazing. I just had him on the show. He'll be, he'll be on a couple episodes before you, but I mean, what an incredibly another generous soul. And this keeps characterizing the Rise communities, these people who are just.
He's a dad of 6 too.
He's a dad of 6. I know. Yes. It's just like, well, look, parenting is no joke. And anybody who can, hold your responsibility as a parent and at the same time, fulfill your own professional life and help others and everything. I mean, you're ahead of the game that way. It's just, you're doing something right. Brian with 6 kids, I mean, between him and his wife, he's just, anyway, I think he's just a genuine article, as they sometimes say. And anyway, he's walked me through the process to what's going on in Web3 a couple times now. I've seen him present twice, and I got to say, he's just like, I know that you had seen him at the Rise VIP session.
Yeah, I was doing the session with him. I was hosting you with him.
Yeah, see, you're stepping up. Yeah. Like that's what I'm saying. You're giving of yourself selflessly to kind of help with basically what's turning out to be a co-learning, a mutual, like a community of learners. And, I think it's wonderful that we're all kind of doing that in some way.
Mitch Jackson? Was it Mitch Jackson?
Yeah. Mitch Jackson. Yeah.
His presentation to our group was so eye-opening. And I keep quoting everything I experienced when he showed us the opportunity to present ourselves virtually in a business setting, and the visuals. It's hard to explain here with audio, but the visuals, what he showed us, it's basically like a Zoom within the headsets, within, the metaverse, with, just the opportunities to really stand out, and the case studies he mentioned as well.
I think for visual people, especially like, I know, Valentina, a lot of your business is through Instagram. Your main business, you help people to learn about Instagram and beyond engagement, but even your other business where you are facilitating, this kind of fashion boxes for all those female entrepreneurs, right? It's so much fun to watch how you're just kind of just killing it on Instagram with it, right? And what I was thinking though is when we think about the little exposure I've had to the visual world of the metaverse anyway, or the ones that we're playing around with, it's actually, the potential is really endless. And I'm having trouble putting it into words because I'm trying to describe it for the listeners, but imagine.
I can describe it for you because like I said it I even talked to my neighbors at the bus stop, and I was like, it's like you go into a virtual a waiting room, and you can put, like, I'm into succulents, as you can see in the visuals. I'm a big succulent fan. You're going into this beautiful oasis of an office, and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
There's no budget. You could, if you want your walls to be full of plants, you could do it. And then you take that person into a virtual conference room. So think of like a mahogany conference table. And then you literally sit that person in the table. And then in the table is an iPad showing your presentation, your PowerPoint presentation. And then you just take the person to like the kitchenette, and you could, have a sandwich with them virtually. And, there I can have the dog that I don't have anymore. I did that in my little room. I put a sandwich, because I'm always thinking about food. I always think about food in my mind. So I was like, this is so me. And I don't have to worry about going to a furniture place or a store repair place, and just do whatever I want.
Is this all on spatial?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're using spatial. What we've learned is there's not just one. There are many metaverses, and so spatial is its own thing. And I think it's just to build on what you're saying. So you can decorate your own kind of your own room and your waiting room however you want. Really put whatever you want in there. But what surprised me was that you could take any of the image files that you have, that you own,
exactly,
and you can frame them and put them up in places. And I'm sure different levels of membership and different kind of even different products, platforms maybe have different ways of doing this. But you can put all the images of your fashion line, let's say, for example, on display in a metaverse room, and you can bring in buyers from all over the world at once, at the same time, and have them just sit there in your metaverse auditorium and look at your visuals without them having to go to, they're already kind of taking an extra leap to go to some digital location. But this way, it's not just a one-way look at Instagram and see the image. It's, you're in a showroom, you're looking at these images and maybe even 3D stuff and maybe even videos. And the proprietor of those images, that you can be there to answer their questions and kind of point out some things that are interesting. Like, it's just one of the many small things that you can do with this. And I think that particular part of it really, really is exciting. And it's kind of an extension of a game or an experiential thing, right? And in some ways, that's actually the easiest part of all this Web3 stuff to understand.
Yeah, and it's like they were saying something about, like, what was it? Was it Gucci that they had a pair of virtual shoes that sold out within like 12 minutes or something like that? Like, people want these virtual things that we have in the real world, but virtually. They want to flaunt that they have this collection of stuff. I might be wrong with the name, but I think that's what
like Gucci or Nike or something. And I thought it was kind of silly. When I heard Matt talk about that, when I heard Brian talk about it, I was like, okay. But once you go into the environment, you're like, okay, I understand. I'm stuck with this terrible hoodie that is like, my avatar has like a hoodie or button down shirt. That's all. And I got to admit, I'm like, how can I get a better shirt? And I'm like, I'm not going to spend money on this now, but I'm tempted. And I can imagine if you spend a lot of time there and that's how you interact with people, you're going to be like, yeah, I'll spend $5 on a shirt. Screw that.
Yeah.
So, that's at the minor's level. Now, the stuff about Web3 that really jazzes me up, that I feel is like, oh, is amazing, is all of the activity or the game changer that the wallet and validation kind of system and the token and wallet world is going to bring us. And we can't explain it here, as I know Brian already explained it last episode. The possibilities there are incredible, as are the possibilities for really foul play. So a lot has to be, kind of adjusted or developed before it goes mainstream, I think. But man, it's mind numbing. And that's why I'm spending a lot of time with it. I think there's so much there. And I was telling my mom, of all people,
I love this.
She's 81 now, and maybe she'll hear this, maybe she won't, but let me just say that her phone, which is a several years back model of a Galaxy, I think it is. So it's an Android phone. And I can't use Android phone. She was in the diner and she couldn't connect to the Wi-Fi in the diner, or her cellular data wasn't working. So she's like, I have to go to the Verizon store and take care of this. Right. Now, now I know that the kind of shop person at the Verizon store, the person working the register, is not necessarily going to be a tech support person who's going to help her with her Wi-Fi. In fact, it's just probably, like she just has to click a setting on the phone. But, that's the thing. Like, she's always like, I'm just going to go and, I'm going to go to the Verizon store anytime she has a problem with her phone.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to talk to her about the metaverse. It's kind of a difficult challenge, but I was saying to her, at least at a high level, like, look, she's always concerned about, she wants her son to be successful. Right. So I was saying to her that I'm involved in these communities and this is what we're doing. And, you said, please don't even bother asking questions. You're not going to understand the answers. But what I can tell you is that this is the next level of technology and the next level of interaction with people. And only a half a dozen people in the whole world understand what this stuff is. Like, really, like almost nobody knows it. Yeah. We're just starting to scratch the surface, but that puts us still like way at the tip of the spear.
Exactly.
So like,
exactly.
So that's where that's where I went, not to protect my daughters, but to think about, okay, inadvertently, I guess indirectly, how am I going to support myself and my family in the future? Right. Because, I hope my corporate job lasts. I love it. I'm having a great time with it. But, will it be, after retirement? How am I going to, kind of make a living or do things, and hope maybe if I need to. And I think that.
So now you and me share something in common.
Yeah.
Hopefully I don't get in trouble for saying this, but we both stay up at night thinking about the possibilities of this.
And that was like sort of towards the final questions I had to ask is, what keeps you up at night? And I feel like I know the answer is, as professionally speaking, it's Web3. It's, oh my God, like my mind is spinning with this stuff. Being relevant.
You have to be relevant. As a marketer, we could never go on vacation because the few times I go on vacation, something happens. Something new came out.
You're right. It's a precarious existence, but I think, I think we can go on vacation, but we have to take our laptops with us. We have to take our phones with us. We have to keep reading, because we do have so much knowledge that we have to stay on top of. But what we can't do for sure is to get complacent. And it's not just us. Like, remember, the brands that we represent, the people we represent, the companies that we work for, our customers and clients, we have to be, I suppose that we have to be at the front of this whole thing on their behalf too. So we're not only in it for like my own, like understanding my own skill set and just making myself like recession proof or more marketable or whatever it is. It's really like, I won't be able to help my company unless somebody understands all this stuff. And I have to now, or I feel like I have a mission to convince and persuade the leadership of my company and of my teams of which parts of all this Web3 stuff we should be paying attention to. They don't really need a lot of convincing. They know it's important. They just have to be educated just like everybody else does. And I feel grateful that I'm with a group of people that actually feel that way. They're like, yeah, go on, Dan, keep learning, right? So somebody has to, right?
You have to be very grateful because gratitude, again,
yeah,
you're in a very good situation where they appreciate you learning and bringing back feedback.
Exactly.
Like, we can't say that about a lot of other people.
One of our, just not to plug Lixil too much, but one of our corporate values is experiment and learn. Like we actually, part of our performance review is based on, do we have an experiment and learn mindset? So I take that part a little bit too far sometimes, but it's fine. Like, as long as I can keep bringing value back to the company and this stuff that we're doing, Valentina, like, we're so cutting edge for the Rise community. I just feel like, how can I filter this into something that I can then talk to my colleagues about without them looking like I'm crazy? You know what I did the other day? I showed them some images that I created using Midjourney. Have you seen that yet? So it's been in one of the chat rooms in our community. Okay. So our community is run on Discord. There's a bunch of chat rooms, right? It's in the it might be in the Web3 chat room. But anyway, like, there's this AI called Midjourney, and there's a few different ones where you basically input a string of text and it creates an image based on that, right?
Oh, yes. I saw it. It spooked everyone. Yeah,
it's very spooky.
Yeah, because it can be very spooky. It can be. Yes.
And there's some of them are better than others, but this one is really interesting. And I put in a couple of combinations of words just to see what's going to come up. And like, my company, my day job is with Lixil. Lixil is a company that does kitchen and bath stuff, and American Standard is one of our brands, et cetera. So just for the hell of it, just for shits and giggles, sorry, it's a terrible pun because I'm going to talk about toilets. I put in Midjourney, I said, I think I used the word AI toilet, right? Or it might have been like robotic toilet, something like this, just because I wanted to show it to my colleagues because it's, this is our business. And I thought it would be funny. So, I was on my team call. I was like, okay, before everybody goes, I just want you to know that we have the capability to do some of our own kind of unique design work. And if we want to illustrate some of our content, when do things, there's a new tool available and it's free, and I'm happy to do it for you all. But here's some examples, and I showed the digital toilets that I created. It's hysterical, and I could see on the Zoom like my colleagues are just like, "What the hell are you up to, Dan? What is that thing?" And they look kind of cool. They look kind of like cool for a toilet, but it's like, why are you wasting so much time doing that?
No, it reminds me of an Instagram story that you did of, I think it was a toilet in Japan or something that you were showing in one of your stories.
Oh, yeah. Years ago. That's right. Yeah, that's right. And that was long before I started working for this company. I will have you know that toilet was from a competitor. I think since then my in-laws have swapped it out and they're now using a toilet from my company. Thank you very much. However, that said, I'd like these space age toilets. So I thought about that and I showed this thing and they're like, why are you wasting so much time? And I said, look at the hilarity of this, but look at the progress that this can bring. And before you say anything about wasting so much time, how long do you think this took me? And they couldn't answer. I said, it took less than 60 seconds. So in 60 seconds, I got 4 illustrations that were they're funny in a way. But that's the whole thing, right? The tools, the technology is getting so far out. This is an AI, right? Like that you tell it what to do. I mean, the friction is getting to be less. The time, like 60 seconds to do that kind of stuff. Why wouldn't you spend 10 minutes experimenting? Why not, right? So,
and then if you read the latest edition, he talks about that. David Merman Scott in his book. Mm-hmm. It's the AI. There's a whole chapter on AI.
All right, you got me. I don't
want to do any spoiler alerts.
But like literally, like if you have like a few minutes here and there, and this is something that if your job and your future is about communicating with people and being relevant, right? Then then for crying out loud, go and make some pictures, right? Like sign into that AI. So I don't know. It's a lot of fun. We learn all this stuff in the community, but that does, I've seen some people do amazing work with this. I've seen some scary stuff. So
Wow.
it goes the whole gambit. And I know that you are very visual. You're doing a lot of work on Instagram. I mean, I can only imagine how you're going to take this to different levels,
Yeah, I know it's an opportunity. And again, when he spoke to our group, Mitch Jackson, I think, and he was talking about case studies and how it's applicable for businesses and the opportunities. And I was like, this is worth investing in. I'm definitely going to get myself a headset and, look more into this because like I said, you do want to be ahead of the game.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes it's to get to that next level. Yeah, you do need to put a little bit of skin in the game for sure.
And you have to be comfortable being embarrassed that I felt when we did our first online.
The metaverse meeting?
What do you want to? Yes.
Yeah, I missed it.
I
wasn't able to be there.
I was very uncomfortable because I was like, I really don't know that much.
I think I told this story to Brian, but I couldn't make it to the meeting.
Yeah.
But I keep like every once in a while, I've been checking out the room. So I put on the headset, and I go into the space, or I do it on my desktop here. But that desktop experience is very different. But you can control yourself much easier on the desktop when you got the headset on. Like to move around in these spaces takes a lot of practice and figuring it out, right? So I couldn't figure out what the hell I was doing.
Everyone was feeling like that. Yeah. And the thing is, it's good that you were by yourself because imagine doing that in front of all like 15, 20 people. And then I'm running into you.
Right.
And I did it on my computer because I didn't have the headset. I had to download software.
Okay.
And I thought I had it done. So, but I had to do it on the computer and I kept running into people, like hitting them. And then I kept pressing 5, which is like a disco dance. Because they had music playing. So I was like, what am I going to do in a real life situation? I'm going to dance.
That's funny. I just couldn't. I was in the big room by myself and I saw like people put up pictures and there's like, some of them are hanging in the middle of space and different. It's so much. It's funny. And I'll throw some things up there just to say, hey, like Dan was here. But my first time in there, I didn't know what that was doing. I started to, I pressed some button and all of a sudden I've got like graffiti going on. Like I'm like drawing. And I'm like, what the hell? And I start I'm drawing something. I'm like, oh, this is cool. And I start like writing my name. I'm like, oh yeah, signing my name. And I'm actually moving around in 3D because I've got my headset on. I'm sort of spinning around in circles, drawing so there's like concentric circles of my name now in different colors. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of interesting. But then I realized I've just graffitied our communal auditorium.
Oh my goodness.
Like,
and you don't know how to get rid of it.
I couldn't figure it out. It was so hard. I was like, what the hell? And it took me like 15, 20 minutes just to figure out how to get rid of this thing. I'm like, oh shit. And I'm pushing things and I'm trying to move stuff around my fingers and, doing minority report, like it doesn't work that way. Simply is not that easy.
And then you got motion sickness because you were wearing it too long, a little bit, headset.
And I was just like, I didn't know. So finally I figured it out. Like I figured out that you could just delete things in a certain way, but it took me a while and I cleaned up after myself and there was no evidence that I was ever there. So, but it's fun. It's a lot of fun. I do recommend people do it. But Valentina, sadly we're sort of towards the end of our time here. And I just wanted to ask you, like, just finally, is there anything else that you'd like to kind of convey to our listeners? I mean, this has been a really so much fun conversation. We talked about so many different things. Putting yourself out there for sure is, I think, one of the key takeaways, but also, this experimentation and staying relevant. I think we can't emphasize that strongly enough. And I wanted to get more into community, but the fact is that what you're hearing here is that community. It's that result of that community. Like
it's based off of a community that you and me met. What is it? I don't know how to count, but it's been like less than 6 months ago.
Really, it's just we met once in person,
not
a
even
couple days,
5 months ago. Yeah,
but then there's this constant interaction. The idea that like small interactions where I'm like, geez, Valentina's like voluntarily giving me information, or she's sharing stuff, or it's like she's she's just such a selfless person. And like I realized that I I do my bit, but I mean, I have my own thing going on, but I'm trying to contribute more to the community. And luckily, fortunately, you decided that it's okay to hang out with me for an hour on this show. And, you know, I don't know, like it wouldn't have been as easy to do this if we didn't have that community going. We have those values about our profession in common. And, you know, certainly that connection to Mark and to the other people in the community, it's been wonderful. But yeah, so anyway, we covered all that stuff. If there's anything else you want to add, now's time.
You know, again, take the time to research.
Mm-hmm.
The information's out there. There's some people that are not out there, but if they try to see if you can make a connection, I think it breaks barriers. Like when we first met, we talked about kids or kids, you know, and then it just breaks barriers. You might not have kids, you might have a dog, or you might, you know, talk about food. But try to get to know that person because it does help you connect with them.
Yep.
And like I said, be authentic, research, and really go for it. I'm a big believer of carpe diem, like seize the day, like do it.
Yeah.
Just do it.
Well, I think you're a great example. You're an exemplary, put yourself out there person. I don't know what the right word for that is. I guess extrovert, maybe people would say, but it's not quite the same thing. You know, introverts can do this very well. It's more about, you know, intentional. That's right. Thank you. That's the word I started with. It's that whole point of intent, but coming from a great place, from a positive mindset, from a learner's mindset, and a sharer and a giver. And that is you to me. Like you're this enthusiastic, giving learner, teacher. Like it's so much fun interacting with you. And I'm so glad that we're part of the community together. And I encourage all of our listeners here to go find Valentina on Instagram at Valentina EG. And it's just her first name and then EG is one. There's no little marks or anything in there. Check out beyond-engagement.com, where you'll learn more about her business. Of course, check her out on LinkedIn. She's a killer profile. You know, a lot of stuff that you might want to know about Valentina is all there. You know, did I miss anything, Valentina, or any other places that you want people to find you?
I think that's probably the best way to reach me. Yeah. But I really want to thank you for having me because it's been such a fun conversation, very candid conversation, and a good reminder for people to put the heart into it.
Absolutely. Put the heart into it. And those are great words to just end on. And so I want to thank you so much for coming. It was a real pleasure. And you got to come back again sometime.
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
You got it.
All right. Thanks for listening to the Dan Nessel Show. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. You know, people always ask me, why do I do the show? I do it for the ratings. I do it for your validation. So do me a favor. Go over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or someplace else, wherever you're listening to podcasts, and subscribe, leave a review, rate me, and share with your friends. Anything you can do to spread the word, I deeply appreciate it. Thanks again for listening to The Dan Nessel Show.